There's a constant and fierce battle going on between goldbugs and Bitcoin maxis. In the inevitable collapse of fiat, which one will reign? Which one will rule? And which one, therefore, should you invest in? Well, I've got news for you. It's not an either or. It's a both and I'm going to explain why. Ready? Let's dive in. You may or may not be aware, but I regularly appear on interviews on other YouTube channels, and this is a question that comes up very frequently that I'm not sure I've ever covered explicitly on this channel, so I wanted to explain what would happen in a complete fiat collapse to both gold and Bitcoin, regardless of which one wins. And the answer is they both win. And there are two reasons why. Number one, competitive advantage. Number two, sound money system incentives. So first, let's look at competitive advantages. Take a trip back in time with me about 60 years ago. The leader of Singapore had a grand vision for all of Malaysia. At that time, Singapore was a part of Malaysia. It wasn't its own country yet. He went to Malaysia and he said, hey, look, I've got a plan. We're going to turn this country around. We're going to be the best country on earth, the richest country on earth. Let's do it. Primarily involving freedom, low taxes. And they said no. And in fact, if you do this, you have to secede. You can't be a part of Malaysia. Now, the King of Singapore said that it was basically the saddest day of his life when he decided to secede from Malaysia. I think he said it's one of the only times in his life he's ever cried. But he went ahead and did it. And fast forward to today, they're one of the richest countries on earth with one of the highest GDPs per capita. I think like 1 in 6 or 1 in 5 people there are millionaires. They've just absolutely turned that place around. And the key thing to remember here is they don't have any natural resources. They did this through competitive advantage called freedom. Economically speaking, they are the freest country on earth, measured by many metrics from the Heritage Economic Freedom Index. So why am I talking about Singapore? Well, if we look today, we can see the potential. The seeds are planted for something similar happening with Bitcoin and El Salvador. El Salvador just recently adopted Bitcoin as its national currency. That is very significant because it is giving its people freedom in money. If a government controls its own money, it controls half of everything everybody in that country does. Whether you're working, you're trading your time for money. If you're going out to eat with friends, you're trading your money for time. Whatever you're doing, half of that transaction is money. And if the government controls the money, the government controls half of everybody's life. And so by giving its people freedom with money, you're granting an unprecedented amount of freedom for your people. And with the capital that this ends up attracting, it's very possible that this gets looked at by other countries that are in a similar position with no natural resources, no competitive advantage, and they say, oh, but wait, we can compete if we adopt Bitcoin. This would spiral into a snowball where more and more countries have to adopt Bitcoin in order to attract capital, attract business, and be in a place where they are competitive enough globally, because that's where the people and the wealth want to go. Now, let's take a pause from the Bitcoin, move over to gold. We have central banks all around the world that for years now have been stockpiling gold. They've been increasing their gold reserves. They've been buying gold like crazy. Not just the small Eastern European countries. We're also seeing it out of China. We're seeing it out of Russia. We're seeing it out of India. We're seeing it some places in Africa. We're seeing massive cultural movements where all the people own a lot of gold, store their wealth in gold. It's very easy to forget as Americans that we don't have the same financial habits as the rest of the world. That's a good thing for the rest of the world because the typical American's financial habits are not the best. At the current moment, the rest of the world relies on the US dollar for being the global reserve currency. Most global trade is done in dollars, but that will come to an end. It's a matter of when, not a matter of if. The more the US weaponizes the dollar, the more it abuses that position, the more it prints money and sends worthless paper overseas to get real goods in return, the more we abuse that position and the more the rest of the world does everything it can to get out from underneath the thumb of the US dollar. And it's a matter of time before somebody else decides we'd like to compete with our own currency and we're going to make it better than a country that can print as much of it because we're going to restrain our printing to the amount of gold that we have. There's already speculation that either China or Russia has enough gold in secret to at least partially back their currency with gold, and Russia might even have enough to 100% back their currency with gold. At that point, you you have a similar effect take place, a similar snowball effect, where in order to compete on the global stage, you won't be able to pay for things with your money unless the other countries know that it's good for gold. It's good for, what it is. You're not going to be able to inflate it away. You're not going to be able to print it, and you're not giving them worthless paper. The same way that the world has existed for thousands of years. Now, I've given you two different scenarios where countries start to adopt Bitcoin as money, where other countries start to adopt gold as their money. My expectation is that it will not be an either or event, that this will be a both and event, because there are many countries that will not be able to stockpile enough gold to compete with some of these countries that have been doing it forever, but at the current prices, they can pick up a lot of Bitcoin. There are also other countries that will not ever touch Bitcoin, but they've been stockpiling gold for a very long time. And if Bitcoin starts to skyrocket and be used as money everywhere, the only way these other countries will be able to compete is with their own sound money, which is gold, and vice versa. If gold takes off, the only way some of these smaller countries with no competitive advantage will be able to compete is with their own sound money, Bitcoin. And so I see a very real scenario where gold and Bitcoin in competition are causing the price or the value of each to go up as more and more countries have to adopt either one in order to compete on the global stage. Now, you'll also have your legacy countries like the United States that do not have any gold or any Bitcoin, and instead are going to have to resort to financial repression and increased regulation and locking down and maybe their CBDC in order to try and compete or at least stop competition. And in the long term, that's a losing game. But for years, in the collapse of a fiat system, it is very likely that you see competing monetary systems rise up that are based on sound money, and you're not going to, at least initially, have one that dominates and takes over. Now, you might be asking, well, what about 100 years from now? Because obviously one is going to win, right? That's how network effects work. That's how global reserve currencies work. You're going to have a winner-take-all scenario. It's not going to happen immediately. Might take a couple decades, but you're going to have a winner-take-all. Well, my first objection is, well, you still don't have to stick to one or the other right now because you don't know which one's going to win. So might as well play both. Number two, these things take a lot of time to unfold. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next year. So there'll be a little bit of advanced warning. Number three, in a sound money system, in very basic terms, you incentivize other forms of sound savings. A sound money system is deflationary, which means it punishes debt and it rewards saving. This means that things with real world value, like immediate payment systems that are uncensorable with large network effects, are very valuable. It also means commodities that have stored their value and maintain their purchasing power for thousands of years are also very valuable. It incentivizes building in the future, not tearing down. It creates more wealth for the future rather than stealing wealth from it. Over time, purchasing power of money goes up because of natural technological deflation. We get more abundance, more stuff. That's more wealth. And the things that do not increase in abundance or that cannot increase in abundance become more valuable relative to all that other stuff. So at the end of the day, especially in the day and age that we are in right now, there's no need to argue about which one will win. Bitcoiners and goldbugs agree on far more than they disagree on. And nobody can see into the future, and there's no reason to just pick one. At least in the beginning, they will both help each other out, and very likely into the far future, they will both benefit each other as well. Now, obviously, I own Bitcoin and gold myself, so if you'd like any of my recommended resources on the products and services that I use to both buy and store Bitcoin and gold, check out my affiliate links in the description below. Finally, I will be speaking at an event in Dallas on March 5th. The VIP package tickets are already sold out, so we just got the general admission tickets available now. I would love to see you there if you'd like to join. The link is in the description below. As always, I really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.